This is Chi for Yourself, Chi-V. Modern fatherhood is about devoting yourself to something or someone greater than yourself. Those are the words of John Badalament, who spent more than 10 years studying dads, kids, and families. He put those findings into a book called The Modern Dad's Dilemma, Staying Connected with Your Kids in a Rapidly Changing World. On this show, he talked about his approach to helping dads build strong, healthy relationships with children of any age. John Badalament, our guest on Chi for Yourself. John, welcome and thanks for joining us today. Lots of changes and challenges facing fathers today, pressures, it seems, from every direction. How did you come to the title, The Modern Dad's Dilemma?
Yeah, the title, The Modern Dad's Dilemma, really is the way I think of the dilemma. And there are many dilemmas, I think, for modern dads, but the central dilemma being how do I, as a modern dad, give what I didn't necessarily get. In other words, how do I build the kind of emotionally connected, close relationship that I want with my children when that's not necessarily what I got from my own relationship with my dad, or what I necessarily saw, growing up with, dads and children around me. In other words, the expectations, the job description for being a dad today are very different than they were for past generations. And that's not to say, there's not to knock past generations of dads in saying, the dilemma is how do I give what I didn't get, but it is to say that the expectations from women, from, I think, increasingly from men ourselves, for being a good dad have changed, and that today being a good dad, or at least a central part of being a good dad, is focused on building a close, connected relationship with the child. Whereas I think in the past, the job or the expectation for dads was to be a good provider, to be the sort of stereotypical or traditional breadwinner, and that focusing on an emotional connection with the child was certainly not your sort of typical or average expectation in general. Yeah.
We're all sons of fathers, of course. How much of your personal experiences moved you to write the book?
Well, my relationship with my biological dad and with my stepdad have clearly influenced, in many ways shaped the work that I do, both with this book and also in my work as an educator and as a documentary filmmaker. I made a film about men and their fathers, which actually was sort of my initially, I would say, laid the groundwork for what is this book. My relationship with these two men, very complex relationship. My dad was divorced my mom when I was about 4, and really remained a sort of remained present, not necessarily in physical sense, but that relationship was ongoing and continues to this day, was an ongoing source of both love and pain. And so I would say that the answer to that is, those relationships have absolutely inspired and shaped my work, but really that's the personal side, and has led me to working with dads in adult male caregivers, dad figures, father figures. That relationship has led me to working with dads in a whole variety of ways.
One statement early in the book sounds almost ominous. The legacy of our parents, for better or worse, lives inside each of us. For a lot of us, it seems almost like baggage. Talk about the parents' legacy.
Sure. Yeah, it is not meant. It sounds like it should have a big, some music behind it. But no, the idea that the legacy is inside of us, not in any sort of alien form, or I think the conjures image of what's her name, the from the movie Aliens, where the beast comes out of her. What's her name? Susan Sarandon. No, this is the idea that we all have a legacy. We're all influenced, whether our dad was, and our mom for that matter, our caregivers, our primary caregivers, whether or not they were present or absent in our lives. Their legacy is inside of us. Their genes, on a biological level, chemical level, if you will, we're affected by our parents, of course, but also that we're shaped in large part, by the relationship that we had or didn't have with them. And so my point in the book is I have 6 practices that I go through in the book, and I have stories of men of modern dads that have really worked on these practices, and one of them is the legacy, and that is you have to understand, I think it's imperative of every generation to understand the legacy, the father and the mother and the caregivers that have come before you, to really understand how, you have to look at that legacy to understand how your parenting, to understand how that affects you for better and for worse. And the simple way in the book that I have dads look at this is to say, what are the gifts that you got from your own father? And there's a section on mothers as well. But what are the gifts you got from your dad, and how are you going to pass them on to your kids? And then what are the liabilities? What are the things that you have to watch out for and protect your kids from? And specifically, how are you going to do that? So I have very practical, straightforward, rather simple-looking activities or exercises to get men thinking about this legacy and really looking at, how am I going to pass on my dad's sense of humor or his work ethic? By the same token, how am I going to do differently than my dad who was alcoholic or my dad who was never there for me? How am I going to do differently? Beyond just putting to words, well, I'm going to be different from him. Part of that legacy work is really to shape a vision for the future.
We do see encouraging signs of dads' involvement with their kids, pushing the stroller, involvement in kid activities, sports and things, and yet more and more homes, it seems, are made up of single mother and kids. Are guys just missing the message?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's ironic in a sense. I'm saying on the one hand that I think today we have a tremendous opportunity as dads, as men, to reshape fatherhood, and that we do see dads more actively, generally speaking, we see dads actively involved in their kids' lives in different ways, in ways that we haven't necessarily seen before. In other words, pushing strollers, most men show up to their child's first birth, in the high 90th percentile. That's the stat on how many men show up for their children's first birth, which is very different from even just a generation ago. So while we do have, and we see diaper changing stations I live in Boston, Fenway Park, you can find a diaper changing station in the men's bathroom. That is something that I can guarantee a generation ago, or when I first started going to Fenway in 1977, the men's bathroom was no place to be bringing a baby, I can assure you. So what I'm saying is here's a roadmap. Here's a very practical way, 6 practices that you can see how other dads are using them. Here's a way to really take this to the next level. And I'm trying to work with guys that do want to get on board, guys that do want to be better dads. And my hope is that we will reach a sort of critical mass, and I think we are building increasingly more involvement and engagement with children, and so I'm trying to play to the strengths and play to what I think are, men's are positive sides.